Road tripping around Italy might seem like it's a challenging vacation thanks to the reputation of Italian drivers for the most part, but let's break that myth and share the delights of exploring the southern Italian regions of Puglia and Basilicata by car on episode number 262 of the Untold Italy podcast.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week your host, Katy Clarke, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Ciao a tutti, hope you're all doing well. I'm great, thanks for asking, but I do know that a lot of you are reeling from recent world events and wondering if it is even right to be dreaming of travel and heading across the world to Italy. So before we start this week's episode, I want to address what's happening, the upheaval, pace of change, and uncertainty around us. I'll be honest, it's unsettling and weird, and it can make us question our plans and even our dreams. Here's the thing though. Uncertainty is part of life, and didn't we learn that the hard way only a few years ago? In times like these, it's tempting to shrink our world, bunker down, and press pause on the things that bring us joy. But this is what I know. The best part of travel isn't visiting new places, seeing new things, and trying new foods. It's connecting with people. And that's something that we need now more than ever. Over decades of travel around Italy and the world, thousands of micro moments prove to me again and again that we humans have far more in common than any differences that you might notice on the surface. Some of my favourite Italian micro moments are having the nonna in the piazza who say "Bella Famiglia" as you are wiping chocolate gelato off your toddlers' faces and everywhere else. And, that's happened to me quite a few times. It's also the connection you feel when friendly fellow travellers help me get my luggage on the train when I was overwhelmed and had clearly overpacked and it was all my fault. And there was no judgment. Everyone was just helping each other. And lastly, the grin on the cheesemaker's face as mozzarella juice drizzled down my chin. It's a connection. It's about people. And deeper conversations reveal that we share similar dreams and hopes of a life well lived, which is, to me, spending time with our family and friends, exploring the world and contributing to our communities. And above all, that we all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. We have one precious life on our beautiful planet, and if you have the opportunity to travel this year, I say go. Enjoy every last minute, soak it up, connect with Italians and fellow travellers from around the world, and report back to your community that the world is a wonderful place to be shared and celebrated. Thanks for listening, and now on to today's show where we're headed to beautiful Puglia and Basilicata and taking a road trip of sorts around some favourite places shared by our guest Cassie, an American living in the region of Abruzzo with her young family. Cassie's here to share with us how she road trips around this region, the towns worth visiting, and tips and tricks for having your best vacation in southern Italy. So andiamo, let's go. Benvenuta, Cassie. Welcome onto the Untold Italy podcast.
Thank you for having me, Katy.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here, Cassie, beaming onto our airwaves from beautiful Abruzzo. But I guess we can tell by your accent that this may not be where you grew up. So can you share with our audience a little bit about your story and how you came to be living in Italy?
Of course. I was originally born in Seattle along with my husband, so I think the accent is a bit more West Coast, casual. But however, the last place that we did live in the US was in New York. In 2019, I went to the company that I was currently working for and I just asked, hey, can I work remotely by any chance? And they said yes. And this was also before COVID, so they were kind of ahead of the curve there. But with that blessing, I said, let's just go to Europe. It's just something that I've always wanted to do, go and travel around the continent. And we were in a pretty fortunate position because I do have family in the Czech Republic. So it was nice to kind of have a base, also not pay rent, which was a huge thing, and allowed us to just financially, it freed us up to go and travel. Then we found out that we were having a daughter, which changed things a little bit, as one can imagine. But it started to feel like we should be thinking more about a not permanent, but something more stable to raise a family, just more of an environment where we can be more of a typical family. So since we were already in Europe, we always heard about these affordable or like the €1 homes in Italy. Most of the time, I thought that they were a scam and I really didn't know what to think of it. But since we were in Europe physically, I said, well, let's just go check them out. There's no harm in that. So we actually contacted a real estate agent, multiple agencies, because the houses were just all over Europe or all over Italy. And at that point, we didn't even know where in Italy we wanted to be, which is another adventure. But ultimately, we landed in Abruzzo because there were so many of these affordable houses for sale. So we did kind of a house hunter international tour and landed on one that we really liked. It was in our budget. We could see ourselves remodeling it ourselves. I hate to say that the rest is history, but that's just how it went. Things unfolded pretty naturally after that. It was a place that we could just call our own. It was in Italy, like who doesn't love to be in Italy? And it also just continued to serve as a good base for us to travel in case we still wanted to do that.
Wow, that's amazing. I think you're living a lot of people's dream, and congratulations to you for just, biting the bullet and just going for it. Like, I think we can sometimes overthink things, but I guess it probably helped you had the right visas in place as well.
Yeah, that took a lot of the pressure off because I do have dual citizenship. So even though I was born in the US, I do have a Czech passport. And then my daughter was also born in Czech. So she has dual citizenship. And then my husband just has it through marriage. So not having to really worry about that and kind of being able to take our time, that really did help the process. It is still possible even without that because we do have some friends that have done it.
You've got a similar philosophy to me, I know, about traveling with your daughter. I think it's amazing. And, what do you say to people that maybe don't think that you can travel with a young child, or you think you have to do certain types of travel?
Kids are so adaptable, and I think people tend to forget that, especially at a young age, because they don't know anything else. And so we have this idea that they have the mindset of an adult that has had experiences, but they don't know anything. So if you show them something as is for the first time, that's going to be their impression. They're not going to do what adults tend to do when they travel to new places, which is compare. Children just absorb it. I think parents put a lot more pressure on traveling with kids than there needs to be. Just try it.
I agree. And a lot of people say to me, oh, but they won't remember. And I think, well, they might not remember specific things, but they remember the vibe of it and they remember how they felt, and they are more adaptable, I think, a lot of these children that have done travel, because they see the differences in people and they know at the end of the day that everyone's the same, and they can see how different people respond to how they behave and how they talk. It's an amazing opportunity you've given your daughter. And Cassie was telling me that she's actually going to be trilingual, right?
Yes, she's going to be trilingual, which I will admit was not easy during the first couple of years, but it's a commitment that I told myself I really want to stick with. So yeah, she'll be English speaking, Czech speaking, and then Italian speaking. At this point, she speaks the most in Italian, but she definitely understands all three languages, which is really cool to see.
Amazing. What a wonderful job you're doing. So you've got an amazing life there in Abruzzo that you've set up, and I guess it's the perfect base to explore Italy, being kind of right in the middle there. You can go south, you can go north, and you can explore around. And you mentioned that you had some experience road tripping around the Puglia and Basilicata regions, and I know so many of our listeners are very, very interested in learning more about that, because I think Puglia would probably have to be the most popular region that people are interested in right now. And definitely from our tours business, all of our Puglia tours that also include Matera in Basilicata are sold out for 2025. So we know there's a huge interest, and I've been there a couple of times, but I've only scratched the surface. So I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say about it. What prompted you to go to that region?
I know Puglia is having its moment. Totally understandable that your tours are sold out for that. And I love it, but I also a little bit resent it because you can tell the difference of how popular it is. For example, compared to maybe 6 years ago, which is the very first time that we went to Puglia to explore, compared to like within the past couple of years, it is just crazy if you go at the wrong time, I must say. But we've never been the type of people to flock to like the Amalfi Coast. Not that it isn't beautiful, it's gorgeous for a reason, and that's why people go. But again, the crowds can just be so overwhelming, and I think just kind of ruin the overall experience. So when we first heard about Puglia, it really came about because we were looking for a place that Italians go to for summer vacation. And we did read and hear about that Puglia was one of those places that people like to go. We road tripped, I would say maybe 2 or 3 times now around Puglia. People love the iconic destinations like Polignano a Mare and Alberobello, and no doubt they are worth visiting. But I think my favorite part about taking a road trip is that you can go all the way down to the Salento Peninsula, which is my absolute favorite. And if you are primarily going to Puglia for the beaches, like that's where you need to go. Not that, the northern part isn't nice, but just the Salento Peninsula is perfect for beaches. And there's all these like turquoise coves, and it just feels more relaxed and more authentic than the northern part where more of the popular places are.
Tell us about some of the places down there that were your favourites in Salento, because I think really interesting thing about what you just said is that you actually have to make a bit more of an effort to go down there. And you can't get down there by public transport either. I mean, you could if you had a lot of time and you're very patient, but I think the average person listening to this podcast probably doesn't have that time. But you do need to put in a bit of an effort to get down to Salento. And apart from the beaches, what else is there down there?
Yeah, the effort is actually a really good point because only during the summer, there is a bus called the Salento bus, which only runs for tourists. But again, you know this as well, that bus travel in Italy can just take up so much of your time, and I don't love it, and the train doesn't run that efficiently. So yeah, taking the road trip down to Salento that's why you need it for the flexibility. We stayed around Gallipoli, and then Ostuni is another favorite of mine on the other side. And then Otranto actually is my absolute favorite coastal town in Puglia. I would say that it's 1,000 times better than going to Monopoli or Bari or Brindisi. Otranto kind of has the whole package because it's in Salento and you have access to all these beautiful beaches like within a 20-minute drive. And the town itself is just super cute, quintessential, everything that you would expect from a coastal town in Italy. That would be my top recommended destination.
Yeah, I think it's really intriguing to me that, everyone's got their idea of busy and like touristed and things.
Yeah.
And having spent quite a bit of time in Rome and on the other side of the coast because of what I do for work, it's so interesting to go to Puglia as I actually just breathe a huge sigh and relax because I find it's not as so busy at all. But I mean, there's just degrees of busyness, right? So
yeah.
I think it's the further south you go and the more effort that you need to make, the fewer crowds and the more traditional ways of life that you're going to see.
Yeah, I'm definitely spoiled in that department, and I did that to myself. But it's nice to experience some of these like top destinations, but I can only maybe do it for a day, and then I need to go somewhere where I'm not just like on a beach, that's crowded and like right next to another person. But in Salento, even though Puglia is as popular as it is now, it's refreshing to know that you can still find a beach where you're literally by yourself. That's why I like making the effort to go down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how about driving down there? So I've done a little bit of driving in Puglia myself, and I think it's Not that bad. I think it's pretty easy, actually. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have to agree. People are often intimidated by driving in Italy, particularly in southern Italy. I think there's just like the stereotype, which does hold up in a place like maybe Naples, but that's a completely different story. But when you're driving around Puglia, it is fairly simple. Don't expect a lot of big motorways. That is the only thing. It takes a little bit more time to get around because there is the lack of those, like, multi-lane motorways. But on the flip side, the positive about this is that there are almost no tolls below Bari. So throughout the rest of Italy, you do pay a lot of tolls on the motorways, but you don't have to go through that in Puglia. So that's a huge plus because it does save you some money. But other than that, I would say that you're often on country roads, which, aside from just being a little bit windy and curvy and the occasional like herd of sheep that just, show up out of nowhere, it's really not difficult.
It's part of the charm, the sheep. They're put there especially for you, so you can have the moment.
Yeah.
What I also found really interesting last time I was there was, like there's always, I guess, stereotypes and things we have in our mind about what these places are like, but they definitely have app-based parking, so you can pay for the parking with your app on the phone, which I was like, it's the same app that I have here in Australia, and I was like, oh, this is easy, just to add my license plate in.
Yeah. Is it Easy Park?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want this to be an ad for Easy Park, but but it does work pretty well. I use it whenever there's paid parking in Italy. The app does work. And that's another thing, I guess, in the Salento Peninsula, there are fewer paid parking lots and it's more acceptable to just like park on the side of the road. But I do know in more of the touristy spots, yeah, you do have to pay.
Yeah, it's really relaxed. And like the parking, I mean, I live in a big city and sometimes you go in and you think, oh, they're charging you $50 for parking or something ridiculous, but it's like €1 or two down in Puglia. Like,
oh yeah.
I guess it's also the landscapes that you drive through. It's quite changeable there in Puglia as well. I mean, do you start your trips from your home base in Abruzzo and then drive down? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, so that's pretty convenient for us because we just need to go down our mountain onto the Adriatic motorway, which connects just along the east side of the coast, and it shoots you down all the way to Bari and just all the way down. Like you can go down, down, down. I think it goes inland to Lecce at some point. So yeah, it's an easy drive for us to go down there.
So how long would it take you to get down there?
To Bari, it's about 3 hours, I want to say. I only remember that because we've taken a ferry from Bari. So yeah, we'll usually start somewhere in northern Puglia, so for somewhere near Bari, and then we'll kind of make a loop around the peninsula and loop back around and go back up.
Oh, that makes sense because obviously Puglia is the heel of the boot, so it does lend itself to loops.
Yes. Yeah, no, I am a big believer that a solid road trip needs to be a loop. I do not like backtracking. It's not my favorite. So the more that you can plan an efficient road trip in the shape of a loop, like the better. You're not going to have as many regrets because you'll be able to see everything that you want to see, and you don't have to waste time. In Puglia, though, what I do recommend to others who, maybe are flying in and they rent a car, rent a car in Bari and then head down south all the way to Salento if you have the time. You can even cut through Lecce and then just make your way through the Istria Valley and then go back to Bari.
It's seriously a very beautiful place. And I love the contrast of the landscapes down there. Like you have on one hand, you've got like the red earth and the olive trees, and then you've got the beautiful blue seas. It's really very, very different to the other side of the peninsula, actually.
Yes. And the next time that we go, because there's definitely going to be a next time, is I'm always obsessed with going to the beach and, I want to spend time at the sea if it's summer. This time I want to make more of an effort to explore the inland parts a bit more because I know there's so many cute little towns that probably no one visits because there's so many of them. And Puglia is not small. That's another thing. Like people think that when they go to Puglia, they see like 3 places and they've seen Puglia, but it's massive. So yeah, I don't want to let the sea overshadow probably all the greatness and like the hidden gems that I could find inland as well.
Yeah, one of the places I really like is Altamura, which is it's super cute, and I think it's got a really local vibe about it because it really doesn't, not very many visitors go there, I think, and it's got some amazing bread that they make there, some local bread making traditions.
I'll go anywhere for bread.
Definitely the focaccia there could be life changing. I don't want to, get too excited about it, but it's up there with that focaccia barese. Oh my goodness, that is so good. So how long would you usually spend doing that loop?
Definitely a week. That is like the minimum requirements. Just because we are blessed with time, we can do it maybe in 2 weeks if we want to take our time and not rush it. But for an average person, I think visiting Italy and maybe planning a road trip, you definitely want to give yourself at least 1 week. Just with the longer drive times, if you are planning to go all the way to Salento, it would feel way too rushed if you're trying to fit it into like a 5-day trip. So a week minimum. But in the past, we have taken maybe, I want to say even up to 3 weeks in total.
Oh, that sounds like a dream. That sounds amazing. Yeah. I think with a week, I mean, you could probably have 3 stops there and, fit, like, as you say, the Otranto and then Ostuni and, Gallipoli on the other side, I guess. And then, I'm just thinking about all the things I'd want to do, and it's really hard to think you'd have to cut some stuff out. You really would with only a week.
Yeah. It's a place I also tell people that you don't visit just once. And I think it's good that way. I think you could say the same about many places, but you shouldn't be too ambitious when planning a trip to Puglia because, again, it's just so huge. And even the different just little corners of Puglia, you have the valley and then Salento are just very different from each other. So I wouldn't rush it. It's always best to have that mindset of I'll come back another time and just see the rest.
That's the problem with Italy, isn't it? Like, you're just always going back and trying to find new things. Well, it's kind of like my disease that I have that I that I can't give up because every time you go, you find something different. I don't think that's true really of any place in the world, really, actually. But Italy has got that, I don't know, a very special quality of like diversity and uniqueness just from town to town and village to village that makes it very, very special. So we've covered off the driving, and I do think that that's very doable. And my husband normally drives when we go around, but I did the driving myself and it was absolutely fine. But whereabouts do you stay? What type of accommodations do you like to stay in?
So because we are traveling with a daughter, for me, I like to have a kitchen. So I don't tend to stay in a lot of hotels just because of that. And when we are traveling for long term, like I mentioned, we could be on the road for maybe 3 weeks. I cannot afford a hotel stay for 3 weeks. That's kind of insane. So we do tend to find more like apartment type accommodation. And the kitchen is usually a requirement, but if not, okay, I don't know, I'll figure that out. And another thing is a washing machine because you know that with kids and there's constant laundry. We tend to look for kind of apartments, usually Airbnb, but lately I've noticed that Airbnb hasn't been cheaper than if you were to look on like booking.com. And I feel like booking.com and those types of platforms have been doing a better job at including not just hotels, but guest houses and apartments.
Some people don't like it when I say this, but I always use booking.com. And the reason is because they do make it very easy to find, book and manage everything. I mean, I don't know where you'd find these places if you didn't have a platform like that, to be honest. It's just because they're not very good at advertising, folks. Like you wouldn't find them if they weren't on the platform. So, I feel like booking.com does take a commission from these smaller places, but otherwise you wouldn't find them. So I kind of think you kind of have to look at it that way,
Yeah. I have tried this other tactic where I just go on Google Maps and I will contact if it's like a locally family owned guest house or some kind of B&B, I will contact them directly. Sometimes this has worked out and sometimes it has not, so it's really just a matter of, I don't know, luck, I would say. but it does take more time, obviously, and effort. But you are typically able to save a lot more money if you do that, obviously, because they're not paying a commission to the platform. So if anyone out there is just looking for like a super, super nitty gritty budget travel tip, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that before too. The most frustrating thing to me is, and Cassie and I were talking about this offline before, is that just Italians, sadly, have just not embraced e-commerce or digital marketing, which is part of the charm, I have to say. But it's frustrating if you want to book travel because, like even half the times when you try and book direct on the websites, that doesn't work. So I will spend a good 15 minutes sometimes trying to book direct and then just throw my hands up in the air and just go, well, I tried, but you didn't make it. I couldn't book. And I don't have time for emailing you 5 times.
Yeah.
It has moved on since when I first started traveling, which is a while ago. And this is my favourite story. And I'm sorry if you've been listening a lot of times and you've heard it before, but we used to just turn up at train stations and there'd be people waiting there with a sign and there you go, off you would go. And that happened to me in Czech, actually. That was one of my favourite places that I ever stayed in. Yeah, but I think things have changed. But, it is part of the charm to go and find these smaller places and be part of the neighbourhood, I think, especially in Puglia. Have you ever dreamed of a private luxury Italian escape? Take a classic trip to Italy with everything taken care of in 5-star luxury style with Joe Banana Italy. From the moment you arrive, you won't need to worry about a thing. Simply relax, enjoy the sights of Bella Italia, from the enchanting canals of Venice to the ancient wonders of Rome, and let Joe Banana Italy give you the Italian vacation you've been dreaming of. To learn more, visit their website at untolditaly.com/Joe Banana. That's untolditaly.com/JoeBanana for Joe Banana.
The best stays that we've had in Puglia have definitely been at like the B&Bs where the grandma will come up with breakfast in the morning. Like I'll take that type of experience over a hotel anytime.
Yeah, I'm sure it's handy that you speak Italian though, right?
Unless you're staying, again, like in Pugliano Mare, you can get away with English. But yeah, the rest of it, especially inland, Italian is a must, at least some kind of basic level of it. But even then, like I'm thinking back to the very, very beginning of when we would travel to Italy just to travel to Italy, and we spoke nothing, beyond just buongiorno, and somehow still managed to just get our point across and be understood. So it is possible. It's just a lot of pointing and hand motions. So
you may not have a deep emotional connection conversation though, right?
No, definitely not.
Be cracking jokes. Yeah, I think it's very interesting to see the contrast between north and south because, the further south you go, the more, they're just doing their own thing. If you're there and you're enjoying it, they love it. But, don't expect them. It's not a tourist operation down there at all, is it?
No, it's not, which was even more apparent when we actually road tripped through Basilicata. Because if you think that Puglia is authentic and relaxed, then it's nothing compared to Basilicata. That the difference was actually pretty apparent there. And we didn't think that it would be that different, but it was.
Oh, in what way?
So back to actually accommodation, addresses were they were subjective in Basilicata. We stayed at 3 different places and I couldn't find either of those places. I'm looking at the map, I'm trying to follow the address. I even follow like the personal instructions provided by the person, and they just nothing was just lining up. I just could not. I went down the wrong alleyways. And yeah, so each time that we had to check into one of our stays, it took a minimum of an hour because just the addresses did not exist. And I think 2 out of those 3 times, I just walked into a bar and just asked, like, where is this person's B&B? And those people were able to help me. So again, like if you don't speak Italian or, you're not very comfortable with that type of situation, then Basilicata is just a little bit more of a raw experience, if you will, to people that maybe aren't used to traveling. Like a lot of the infrastructure also just wasn't quite there. For example, I'm thinking of like the parking lots, like even in, Puglia, we were talking about the paid parking lots. A lot of the towns, most of them, even like popular places, didn't have designated parking lots. So it was a lot of street parking, which was, I guess, kind of a blessing because you didn't have to pay for parking, but still circling around, for 30 minutes trying to find parking just to go visit this town takes up time. And obviously, you don't want to just drive into the historic center without knowing what's ahead of you because you could just get stuck and then not be able to get out. There's a lot of guessing, and everything there just required a bit more patience and flexibility, which again, leads back to that's why it's charming. I think that ultimately that's why we enjoyed it so much because it was just very untouched and unspoiled.
I love that situation because this is the thing, everyone, if you're planning any type of road trip in Italy, you've got to build in the travel time. You've got to build in that buffer time because, you might think that Google Maps is the answer, but sounds like Google Maps may need to go around with the car with the satellite dish and its big video camera a few more times around Basilicata because it's just not what we expect. And it's so part of the charm. It is really, and you get frustrated and you get annoyed and then you make it and you think you've climbed Mount Everest because you've got through this challenge. And then you sit in the bar and you have your glass of wine and you just laugh because it's fun.
Yeah, you just forget about all of it. For me, the most frustrating point is when we are trying to visit somewhere for lunch. And at that point, I'm trying to make it before lunch is over at the restaurant. And, maybe we're circling around looking for parking and we're all hungry and we're just, frustrated. And finally, okay, we figured it out. Finally, we make it to the restaurant, we sit down and we get to eat and everything just kind of melts away. But yeah, that's always the peak point of us just ready to explode.
That's such a good tip, though, because if you turn up after, say, 2:00, you're in trouble, people down south. You're not getting anything to eat.
Yeah.
So make sure if you're hungry, and you really should go hungry because the food down there is amazing.
Oh, it is. Tourists that have only been to Rome or Venice, they have no idea the urgency required to make lunch in southern Italy, like to be at lunch on time in Italy. It can be so stressful because one, you don't know if the restaurant that maybe you found online or heard about is going to even be open for whatever reason. Maybe they're just not open on a Wednesday. There's no way for you to know that. Yeah, it just requires a little just flexibility. That's the overall theme of visiting a region like Basilicata.
But that's the thing, they're not updating Google Maps. Even they don't have a Google My Business page, people, that's not important to them.
They could care less.
They could care less, yeah, exactly.
If their restaurant is good and they know it, they know that people will come. And it's a word of mouth type business. People will figure it out. And I'm always amazed at these restaurants, particularly in southern Italy, that aren't located anywhere near a place that gets high traffic, whether it be foot traffic or car traffic. They're always located in the middle of nowhere. And for some reason, you're recommended to go there because it's like the best place to eat. And they're not wrong. It really is. But just the level of confidence that these restaurant owners have, like, we're going to, have this restaurant here just completely out of the way. But people are going to come because the food is good.
And you turn up there and you think, oh, what? And then you go, and then it's all gone away. Because once you sat down and they've put it, whatever they've made in front of you for the day, and you're like, well, that was worth it,
Yeah.
And I think in some senses that even the better the view, the worse the food. There's that place in Polignano, isn't there, which is very fancy in the cave.
Yes, the cave. Yes, I've seen a lot of videos about how the food there was just super mediocre, and yeah, I never trust a restaurant with a nice view.
So, Cassie, apart from lunch and frustrating driving scenarios in Basilicata, there's some beautiful places there too, aren't there?
Yeah, my favorite thing about driving through Basilicata is, also you have to drive through Basilicata. Like, there's just no way for you to plan a nice little train ride, leisurely, train ride through the region. It just doesn't exist. which definitely is unfortunate for the people that live there. Like, I can't imagine, which is the reason why most of the population just lives in the two big cities, which is Matera and Potenza. So if you do want to really explore the region, you have to rent a car. There's just no way around it. But my personal favorite part about it was stumbling upon all of these, they call them ghost towns, which I don't know, isn't the best term. But to me, they're just like these historical landmarks that no one really talks about or knows. No one's made them famous, but it's like a magical, almost eerie feeling when you walk through these towns that have been, almost or completely abandoned. And you envision like just life happening around you. Obviously, there's nothing there right now. But if you have the imagination, you can kind of picture like what it was once like. I personally really geek out about those things. So I had a really fun time just visiting all the ghost towns in Basilicata. And a lot of them aren't even, on the map. Like, they're not tourist attractions. It's intriguing to visit places that you just stumble upon, opposed to like, here's a travel guide, here's the places that you need to go visit. And they were abundant, which, again, is unfortunate. But if you are traveling, it is a really interesting kind of aspect.
And they've probably been there for like hundreds and hundreds of years, if not thousands. People have been living there, obviously. As well in Basilicata. You've got Matera, which is obviously one of the oldest inhabited places in the world, and that's getting a lot of attention now too, I think, Matera.
Yeah, I love Matera. So Matera is the first place that we ever visited in Basilicata, and that just kind of sparked my curiosity of like, well, if this place exists here, there must be more, right? And there are, but Matera is one of those places that I often even suggest to people that maybe want to like go to Rome. I tell them like, no, like go check out Matera. It's, if you want to be surrounded by history that's not overly flashy or whatever, it's such a neat place. And it's one that I can and have gone back to multiple times. And each time I thoroughly just enjoy like walking through and just soaking it in. It's just unreal. It doesn't feel like any other place in Italy, also in my opinion. And I think a lot of that has to do with the history. I just did some brief reading, but I think it has some influence from Turkey because it does look very similar to Cappadocia in Turkey. So if you ever had a chance to walk through Matera, you'll notice like the caves, and they're just like quick cave dwellings, which, who doesn't love to see that? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, human civilization, it's almost like one of the oldest places where people have, Paleolithic, I think, times they've been living there. It's really incredible. And if I've been to the museum there, and just seeing the history of human settlement in that area is super interesting. But also because you have that, what they call the new town, which is a Baroque kind of town up the top, and then you have this completely ancient situation happening in the ravine there. It's very interesting. I wasn't even expecting that Baroque bit up top, but it's really lovely, isn't it? And you've got piazzas and little cafes, and super nice.
It's very dreamy, and I sometimes watch the people that I assume live there just kind of like speed walk past all these places because they're so used to it. And I'm like, oh no, I can't imagine just being used to a place like this. Like, I don't know, it just fascinates me no matter how many times I go there.
Yeah, and I do think if you can stay overnight, it's a really good idea to stay overnight there, because apart from anything else, you're going to miss the crowds because it is getting more popular, but also the sunset is incredible and it's just got a different atmosphere at night.
But also they have some really amazing cave hotels for people who like an experience for their accommodation. They're very nice. Yeah, I would definitely recommend that if it's in the budget. Obviously, they're not cheap, but they're very beautiful.
Oh, well, I think you can get them at a broad range. I've stayed at a couple, and we stayed at one that's super nice one, and then there's some other ones that are a little bit more rustic.
Oh, okay.
And then you can have your little balcony just looking out over the ravine and onto the churches, and it's a really beautiful place. I agree. Amazing. Well, I love your spirit of adventure, Cassie. This is like this type of travel is fantastic. And I think you're very lucky to have that base there initially, but it's totally doable for people. You just need to plan for an extended time. You can't smash it out. This is a slow travel experience.
Yes, that's keyword is slow travel. But also, I think people who may not have the luxury to travel for a long time or as often, they get this serious sense of FOMO, fear of missing out on like the top sites. But once you can get past that, and if you are into the idea of just renting a car and just going, you are going to have, in my opinion, such a more memorable experience than if you were just to go to the top 10. I don't know, to anyone who's like might be hesitant to drive in southern Italy, don't be, because you're really restricting yourself from just having an authentic experience. I think that's what's going to be the thing that you remember most.
I like to do a bit of both, I have to say. And I feel like getting that contrast between the two makes you appreciate the smaller places even more, because you've seen, like what it is to be part of a big tourist machine. So then once you've done that, you can then go and have this other experience and just go, okay, this is actually what life's like here. This is something different to my life back at home. And if you're curious and you look at the different ways of life, and you maybe then can take something home to just think about. It's what I do.
Well, life is all about balance, I think, in any aspect, including travel.
You sound just like me, Cassie. That's exactly what I think. All right. Well, thank you. Grazie mille for taking us for a ride with you on this wonderful road trip around Puglia and Basilicata. It's really wonderful to hear, a spirit of adventure and finding those untold Italy places that we love. So thanks, Cassie. Now, if anyone wanted to keep in touch with your travels and see what you're up to, how could they do that?
They can follow us on our blog, our family travel blog, which is adventuresoface.com.
Well, grazie mille, Cassie, and I hope you continue to have many, many more wonderful adventures in Puglia and Basilicata and the rest of Italy.
Thanks, Katy. This was so fun.
Big thanks to Cassie for sharing her experiences in southern Italy. It's always great to hear a different perspective and view of travel in Italy. I love that Cassie has a thing for ghost towns, and that really piqued my interest, so I'm going to look into that myself. If you have a trip that you'd like to share, please reach out to us at ciao@untolditaly.com. I'm going to be upfront and say we're looking for unique places and experiences, the untold ones, so we can inspire others to go beyond the obvious and connect with places that aren't 100% set up for tourists. So if you have personal experiences that fit that brief, please do reach out. Unfortunately, we will be politely declining business pitches. To learn more about the places Cassie mentioned and get some more information on her travel tips, head on over to our show notes at untolditaly.com/262 for episode number 262, where you'll find the show transcript and links to her blog, Adventures of Ace. Grazie. Thank you to all our wonderful listeners for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. I do hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, then it would be wonderful if you gave us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app. Next week on Untold Italy, we're headed to one of your favourite towns in Tuscany, San Gimignano, to get an insider's view of what some call medieval Manhattan. But until then, it's ciao for now. The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.